How's it going, guys? PARACONOMY Inc. here. I'm just chilling, Professor Fun 101. It is 4:28. How's it going now, everybody? Just tapping in here onto the free vibe here for you guys. I'm having one hell of a day going at it here with a few of the people who end up here. And just heavy on the sauce today over the past like 2 days. People are doing this introvert extrovert thing. So I jumped in on the vibe and tried to get along with the tribe. The tribe is not doing too well. It looks like healing is kind of in congruency today on the people's choice. So people want to heal and they want to feel. So like that could be a big part of what we're tapping into. Wanted to just go ahead and like say a few things. If we just open up, just like scroll around here on social and stuff like that and kind of get a feel for this because there's a big reason of like why we're here doing it the way we're doing it. Um, Okay, fun one. Supposed to remind you of things, right? The social media is more of a sticky note now, in some ways, and it's cool one, right? It's like a moving picture. So like people, right? People are on their versions of it, right? Theirs are faster, slower, whatever. We have an asteroid here. And that brings us to some of the astral projections and astral realm readings and what the capabilities are and whether or not I've been moving the needle on capabilities since some of this stuff has started happening. Um, let's go ahead and head back to 2015. I'll go 10 years ago when some of this all started going down. And like I started doing this for festival like people out in Michigan. Because like I made Ohana. Yes, I made my Ohana out in Chicago off the pink line, okay? Um, there's like a bunch of there's a bunch of people over in that part of the that pocket and over that's just how it kind of went. And I'd have cut to the chase. I had giant halos like floating over my head for a big chunk of my stay in Chicago after I had like from about 2012 when I took my plunge on mushrooms and like from then on looking for healing and like trying to use the music scene to heal and it was good, I had a plug for that. I was doing the right things, and it started falling on me, and my mom wanted to make sure that I was like learning the right things in life so I wasn't coasting too much on one thing and ruining a potentially good way to be. And so that's like kind of how it got us here is my parents kept hoping and assuring themselves it would go away. And that's just not simply the case because of access to internships, lack of communication, um, no good footing for jobs and like getting your start. Where you would have out here, if you would have just stayed home or come back early, you would have been handed a job. You would have worked it and it would have been fine. You wouldn't have felt the need to run away and rebel and try to grow up and just experiment with drugs. Go find a cool hippie sister to like go fuck and lay eggs in. Excuse my language. But like, yeah, like it would have made sense that way. It would have felt simple. And so like that's kind of why it's it's luxurious, right? It should feel simple, but because it's luxurious and it comes with some responsibility, right? So that's where it kind of feels like a little bit is like I went down a path in life that felt really simple for me to kind of like go through. and it required less of me, but it also it barrels through people what it feels like, and I see that now, that my actions may have felt a little like um negligent or something, but it was for safety. And that's where people probably didn't catch on to the speed I attempted to handle a bunch of things in my life, the way my colleagues were also teaching me, but without the same like wallet. So like that's kind of a big reason is if I would have had the wallet, I would be where people expect me to be on this prep life, and having their hipster white boy dream machine over here wouldn't be a problem, and it'd be an easy sell. Still can be 4:34 on the clock, but obviously the people aren't looking for you anymore, loser. They're looking for Zoe, and Zoe's the one who's getting dudes all riled up and excited and stuff like that. So it's changing the entire purpose of you because people are going behind your back now, as a going from a man to a woman, and now you've got women problems on top of that. Like you had women problems, but now you've got women's problems. And that's kind of where this is you got you while you tried to make friends and go about things really nice and hoity-toity, keep things really privileged, they don't do that. And when you cut low, when they cut high, you cut low, and that's why you cut low, and now you cut them off, and that's why they didn't know you could go that low, and you've been doing some things while you're at the low without hitting the bar, and but it just means you're monotonous. It means like you're simple. It means you don't go anywhere. It means you just stay at home and you don't break the law. Um, and that's kind of like one big reason why people don't know where the hell I went. I cut low and I cut people off and out of things. They assumed because I'm low that it's impossible for me to like expand beyond my point of like existence at the low when I've clearly been up on some highs around some really cool people. And that's what keeps me consistent here in places where they thought if we just cut off the consistency, it'll make him the person that we want him to be, and that's a villain. We want to make sure we don't put the right people in jail, because if we're wrong, then we put a good guy in jail who could have been even better, and now he's not. He's gonna be hung up on this for a little while because this is how what we facilitated is control over this part of the conversation because we don't trust we didn't get to know this guy over a year. People know this guy for longer than a year, but we don't. And we made decisions like we knew this person for at least seven. Right. We made decisions for this person like we've known him his whole life, like we were partners, like we were spouses. And on the investigation report for anything going on in my life, looks like even says that, which is totally getting past this mysticism here of what the hell I've been hiding and sitting on for so long that people get wrapped up in their own assumptions to get more out of it, right? They create these barbs, socially speaking, on whatever good stuff you have hidden so they can pull the curtain away from it. It's a big, tricky, kind of messy thing. I'm sure there's good reasons for certain parts to facilitate the colloquialism of disrobing somebody publicly by shingling out your appearances on to those actions, which give away the murderer or the angry person or the thief, right? They're using that in hopes to just to like get back down here. We know you, but then they realize they don't know me, and they didn't have that much going on for them in the first place to do that, and they have this now. which puts them at a, oh no, I just canned a gorilla. Now the gorilla's after me. So that's kind of why they're getting there, and they probably don't have a whole lot. To put it kind of dark Disney here on Euphoria a little bit. It did have this thing going on in Chicago because I was just trying to stay safe. But this thing was coming after me and my friends and family and stuff, so I bagged it. Little did I know this is a like a non-human entity that has been like attempting to get like coerce my like my journey, my coversion away from itself as a masterpiece. So like this whole like spindling and unraveling and stuff between like my Nepsi's points on my cynicism towards any of the trajectory on what it is, I'm getting complicated here, on what it means for me to have the enigmatic release on chakral divination and anything that anybody else that I I welcomed, procured, because as a cognitive dissonance here on guest and residency, people don't have the texture, right? So like you don't give them the friction. If they it right. So when somebody's weathered, you give them the details because they'll know how to handle it. But if you're expecting that they don't, you fill them in with this bullcrap where they have to like break rocks and do stone masonry and stuff. That's why it's originally hand jigged towards the ball and chain parts of like colloquialism. So creating an obtuse situation for people to get snagged on reveals a lot of colors. So this is like kind of how they took the law into their own hands after they gave it to the law. So it was kind of they kind of bamboozled themselves here is they did a double take. They took care of it, then they gave it to the cops to take care of, and then they took care of it again to make sure it was buried. And then they don't have to, and then every day after that, they're also burying it. So that's kind of one big reason why people in the old world used to create a set and setting to unmask the wolf in the village. And this is just how they did it. They're freaking old world Wiccans, and they get people caught up on these barbs in reality while their metaphysics are keeping them disdained away. It's this hoity-toity lectury BS thing that you guys get to kind of procure and articulate at the sticking. So you can put people like me at bar's ends for the basically renegade work. You want to go out and you want to take all the inertia that wolf had, but then give back the little bits without fulfilling it, and you make up your own teeth and details on how to kill the chickens and blah blah blah. So that way they get what they feel like they needed back from the wolf they unmasked, and then some. So that's kind of how they've tokened out towards your parents and the rest of your family. And they got with that, and they thought that you were either fucking that up or you were already on board with something. And so because you weren't, they are the ones who clearly dropped the ball, but everybody's looking at me funny. I filled in all the details here on the cynicism so the village could tee out what it actually has available. That's where the block is, and that's why you give it back to the innocent. And you can contort the truth away from its barbing, and it becomes more of a smooth thing for people to actually haul off. This disappeared in like the 16, 1700s, 1800s. It all but disappeared. Okay. But it's like a big reason why we settled America the way we did is because that's what the colonizers knew. And so they brought that here, and the Native Americans already had that. So you want to learn about magic in America? come to Paraconomy Inc. I'm half Native American, born here in Michigan, and everything is just overly apparent to anybody who's ever been mixed up between French and Native American bloodletting and spiritual ritualizing and self-actualizing any archaic revival that might be going in that we're losing articulation on in humanity because we're devaluing it on instances where people have the fortitude to be able to cornerstone that articulation and then go in and sharpen any of the edges and stuff like that. So you get articulation in detail, and it's not just a big variable. You're actually cutting in and you know the specifics. And it becomes functional. There's friction, right? And so like that's possibly where people are getting caught up by attempting to create less friction in a place that they know facilitates some friction, which is why people are pulled to the drama. Excuse me. People are pulled to the drama of like interacting and teasing one another as like parts of it go on because that is the innocence they're attempting to pull out to see and test criminals and stuff that get unmasked. They'll let the villagers like on and get all in there. And like, kids, you guys are just playing nice. Oh, you're so cute together. Oh, look, we caught the bad guy. Aren't they so shiny? So like that's possibly what's going on. And now it's like the black kid's turn to do it to me. And that sense, it feels like that because we got these guys. Shout out Oracle Apothecary here. These guys are the black kids that I never got to grow up with, and they just play with stones. And they don't like white kids who are full of music, I guess, because they're like, you're gonna take our music. We already got a drummer, so 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 that's my experience with Davison and Flint. Lapeer has very little exposure to culture, so it wasn't until about past 10 years that Lapeer had seen colored people, and my dad was one of the first colored people to marry into white society. Fresh off the boat. He's from Hawaii, my father. So that's why I have to claim in somewhere. I don't get to just be from Hawaii, but like I do have to worry about making that guy look like the shit. So that's why I went out of my way to do some of that shit and look at what you guys all have now. You wish you could get more of it for free. But now I charge a big penny of it over here at Paraconomy Inc. And I push it forward online so people can like light up over the fact that this part of the cynic in this bloodletting would give you the reason the justification to alleviate said bloodletting over the misjudgment, because if they find out too much blood got executed and the guy didn't actually do it, the chickens would like it causes a chain reaction, and there's a tell. um um, the chickens would be pecking at a certain day. They'd let the guy go. So like that's kind of how, if that's not happening today because people don't show up and they don't care about the history lessons or what they even entail, and they just are waiting for their paycheck, then it makes sense that we've lost a lot of creativity along the way with these people who we are putting selectively away from the detail, because if they knew the detail they would go find it. That's just kind of how the magnetism is once you get into the Philosopher's Stone, precursor orb type dealio, Jack and Dexter stuff. And you kind of get with this tribal documentation of like what it is, right? and sex and things like that become this big temple mystery instead of like all these other things. So you can actually, for me, funny for me as a native person, I can just go to Maca or one of the Mexican people that I've met in the past 10, 20 years and be like, hey, you know where the Mexican aliens are at. You might mind if I Cinco de Mayo over here. Yeah, because I gotta tell you, it's hard to swim all the way from here to Hawaii by myself. I've never actually tried, but something tells me I'd need more science. So that's kind of where we have to look at the lecture and splitting on whether or not the women who put me up to the test on other violent men and the men who are like looking at me like, huh, cool, you're not going to make it over here. Right. Right. You're not gonna make it over here, little Geppetto. Go draw your anime lollies. Okay, go tell your transparency somewhere else. So that's a huge part of women in fighting for women's rights even today, in today's society they still need purpose to fulfill because their grandparents lied to them and told them that that's still how it is. So that's kind of why you gotta grow up with the rest of us. You can't just choose to retire everything all of a sudden and just be like, I have to learn about none of that. I'm retired. Right. You can't. Nope. It's Christmas time. And we all get to learn about the odds and ends. That's just, you get to. It's a gift. So like if you're gonna take good care of that gift, you better have a good answer in place of this stuff. I'll lay it in on the on all black style. You better take care of that gift. That's Southern. That's Southern white. Yeah, and that's Southern white. And they'll let you come over in on the colored with that type dogma. And they'll be like, "Yep, you don't work, don't eat." And you're like, "Yep, that's what constant with us too." Really sweet. I can be with black friends. I can be friends with white people. I can be friends with everybody. You would think, right? You'd think that Southern charm would stick. It simply partitioners this classist divide here because there's this classist sexist divide on privilege where we got to open some things up and look at whether or not you guys are doing too much with where you're at currently and how much you made off of this little mistake. Because if we start letting the blacks in, you can't even handle your own Oriental. We start letting the blacks in, you're gonna mishandle those motherfuckers. So that is not something her grandma fighting dying next to Rosa Parks for. Okay? That's why those people have that over there. I'll get to step into history every once in a while and go and welcome them to things. But if I'm supposed to say, hey, Sharon Kelly, stop saying the N word around all these black kids, they're getting nervous. Oh, but I'm teaching. Sharon, put that meth pipe down. Meth, where you been all night? Sharon, stop teaching the kids half drunk. Okay? We're scaring them. How's it going, everybody? I'm Professor Fun. I know a little bit more about the world than those old people who retired and they said it's good enough for them. Okay? You don't gotta listen to all of them. You don't even gotta listen to me. Just like have fun. Yep, just just have fun. So if they're saying the N word on YouTube, can I say it? Let's take this YouTube live stream a different direction. Yes, of course you could say it for Christmas. Just make sure you dole out the right penance to the taxpayers' incentive because if they don't like what they're hearing, the banks will have to take care of that. And if the justice system has this, the banks taking care of it, that the people are happy. So that's a huge part of why I'm in jail. That's a huge part of why people think that it's cool to put a trans person here on the first Hawaiian male born in Michigan who patented telepathy. Dog, I patented my own telepathic line because there's not enough black people in Lapeer. Could you imagine having to go through your whole life knowing that there's something else going on the other side of the fence and it's better than what you have here? Because they don't know what's going on, and they don't have that in Lapeer. And whatever they do, it's only for like a weekend or a holiday or something like that. And so, like, if that's just go on back. Good luck fixing that because that's not going anywhere. And if you're just all of a sudden, hey, I voted Republican, then that's not going to make that go away. What you're going to have to do is acknowledge the fact that it's a setup and it's a jinx on its own hypocrisy. Okay, another part of the new organs that now lay the foundation of where some of this bloodletting justice used to lead actually articulate these part of hypocrisy. And that's kind of why you have to lay waste 454 every day on something that's going to teach people to choose better because they can feel it. And that's possibly why it came off on them and it's rubbing off all the wrong ways on the rest of the world is because somebody gets it, and if that ends up being me over them, then they clearly have parts then they didn't flush out the right way with me because they didn't know. And so that's a part innocent, nobody knew. I did. I tried to tell people. But hey, if you don't keep a good thing good, it turns into this, okay? And this is all I was trying to teach people. Hey, keep this good in case some black people end up moving in next door. They're going to need to make sure I did some of this work for them because I'm the only brown person here for miles, okay? And that's how that sits today in 2025 here in Michigan. That's why I went up north to Traverse City. That's why I'm out here helping trans people get along because it's the newer version of black people too. For them, they want to move all up into that and be like, "Hey, trans suffering matches oppression for black people," and that's just not the case. But it sort of feels like that's being what's wiped in here alongside of some of this privilege. So if we're not looking at the amount of justice that what the monarch doesn't have to meet the serfs because they're black and they don't have to like eat at the same when does this in the old world have anything to do with today and why we're here concurrently like cycling this idiocracy on bills when clearly the legacy of the line looks and appeases people on the man here as a king of the freaking crown next in line. And people are just like, well, I was gonna get in and I was gonna have that, and you're just you though. Come on, can't you get with it? Dude, there are some things people missed with me, and that's a big reason why everybody's gonna feel like this and it's gonna look like that on Christmas every year from now on until people wake up to what they can do to make it less grisly. Yeah. So, like, maybe that's what's going on here. Is this like little grizzly ug mug coming looking for attention and tell people, hey, there's some things that you don't need to worry about. I kind of have been helping them like come into fruition and other people get the picture. There's a difference out here in Michigan today because of people in my friend groups than there was 20 years ago when some of it had to get started. So now that we're here, people are looking for the professionals on this part of the interval, and they're going to need to pull it out from different places and huff and puff around me because I have been legacy lining this entire thing for over 20 years now in my musicianship and my art and trying to get this thing lined up so I have a good art scene and like community I can rely on for certain things. And it's like it's available, but it's not for me. That's like if you were here, you would have it. It's sort of a deal, but like we replaced you. Yeah, but if there was no like back end for that plan and where I come back, like you knew I would come back for even a little bit. So like that's kind of where if you knew that was supposed to be available, but you filled it in with somebody else, then there's a ton of injustice being measured on somebody else. and I'm being proxied off to an old version of who you used to put in that. So if I'm replacing these kids Jake, um, he's like what he's the dirtbag shithead of the group in this town. If they're like trying to be like you're just like Jake, then that's how we got here, and that's why everybody's gonna be like looking at me is because like I'm just the next marauder that came in that like kind of ended up. I'm not even like that, but like I look like it. So because I kinda look like that here, they're like, "Well, we're gonna take it for because you know." Right, they're jumping ahead and they're creating, like, confusion, just so they c in case they need to get out and be like, "Well, I knew the whole time, remember?" And, like, right, it creates a new form of leadership and pulling, so that's kinda why even when that happened back in the day, they would just let this dude, like, kinda bleed for a little bit, and even if you were trying to tell the townspeople, that dude would still be bleeding. So like, right, you could keep lying, but that dude would still be bleeding. And by the time anybody actually like got there, it would have stopped and they would have been like, "Nope, he's telling the truth. It stopped. Fuck this family up." Right. Because like that's kind of like that's how justice used to be. And if we've stepped away from, or if we're looking at it as bleeding people's bank accounts dry, just to measure their true value and worth, and that's the new needle that we're looking at keeping on luxury, then we need to balance out prime versus luxury and whether or not the luxury itself is starting to become more like a crime. So like that could be where we're going towards is if we've created too much like if like when art becomes scam, and so it's no longer an art but now you're scamming. It's no longer a story you're telling but now you're scamming. It's no longer a picture you painted but you've completely disguised something, um, and now people believe that's what's there, right? So if that's a huge part on whatever it is that some of these hoodlings want to go off and do, then it makes sense. My mom has wanted me to play ball with this side of like my cynicism with like black culture for so long, but hasn't trusted herself to do that and won't give me the keys to the car because I can't give her every little end of racism that she's gonna need to know she can trust me because I'm not racist like her parents want her to articulate for the family. And so, because my dad's brown and my mom's white, it changes the way these white people will interact with me and how I'll have to look at jumping through hoops the way my mom is projecting negatively onto reality, which gives them a seance. This gives them more function and control than they would actually need to have over my conservatorship, right? So if we're just trying to teach somebody a lesson, that's one thing. But if it turns out that thief was right there and changed the entire town, it makes the whole town look phony, which is why they have tales like Robin Hood and people come in and they end up with like a whole lot more they brought in as like gold for people to actually like sieve off of because it hurt the kingdom more than it hurt the clan. And so because the clan is many and the kingdom is few, it created this opposing anti-hero villager mindset that if there's hold out long enough you will get to be able to thieve in on the riches of your clan and your ancestry. So that's like a huge part in finding manifest destiny on your original playable characters. Okay? So if you're an NPC, you're a non-playable character, you start to add into interest on the playable characters in reality. So if it turns out that certain people can, they will, if you give them the spotlight. And that's kind of why precursors and catalysts like mushrooms, come buy some mushrooms at paraconomy.earth. You can pre-order yours today. You'll find out that these precursors are the legacy keepers in a lot of ways. Once you take this mushroom, it'll help the legacy procure itself along your own bloodlines. Strangely enough, it's connected to the planet. You eat it, now it's connected to you. So that's a huge part of like disclosure and being able to have something on this part without getting too far in medical um type of pharmaceutical, because once you start adding those into sepsis and nepsis and all your draw lines on dragging your way line between keeping somebody alive and keeping somebody stagnant in life, another partitioner here on between keeping your people thriving and keeping somebody subdued. So if you're attempting to reap more effort from the people and you're not giving them that taxes, that taxes are enigmatic alongside with humanity. So whatever's already alive, you're taking away from it by pushing on that person and like keeping them subdued. Something the Egyptians pretty much had to figure out down the way, because it would cause things like the rivers to like have less for whatever reason, and they'd find out it's a big part of iron and magnetism and like gathering. The more people there are, the more like need there will be, and the more like hope it'll like tip. Or they had a weird system, I'm sure, but like it's very, very, very possible that's all that it needed to have done. And so if people are ignoring that, we've lost detail, dude. So like that's kind of why I'm wondering if you guys wanted to actually open up a can of whoop ass on me and take me to court like that, but also just shove it under the let it it's under the rug, right? Good. Anybody see that? No, it's under the rug. Okay, good. That's what I thought. It's a Christmas time in Michigan. How's it going, everybody? It's a Christmas time in Michigan. It's a Christmas time for you. 5:05 p.m. 5/6/2025. Yeah. Uh-huh. So like you don't have to just be fine with that, okay? That's toxic. But it is how people tend to put me on, and they want me to have that bitterness towards certain things in life, which is why they make them look bad and they take away my fun. So, like that's probably how you get the results of Pride and Prejudice and Justice, the scales of justice and Lady Liberty is kind of yeah. You end up with the numbingness of the character that you wanted to have, and now that person is desirable. That's how corporal punishment works in America. And if it doesn't, you need to get your money back, or it ends up on their company. So that could be where people are in reality. They're still growing up and they haven't been exposed to as much of the sauce as I have. Which is why they might need to think about doing some of the things I've asked them to do. Um, so right. Who knows? It could be the key to our current endeavors in mycology and anthropological justice, anything hereditary, you name it. We're stagnant, and that's gonna create whatever. You guys have money for it. You have lives to live, right? You're older than me, so like you'll live them without me, right? And I'll just live a life after you die, right? Okay, okay. So that won't matter once you're dead. I'll still be alive. Let's see him get past that one today. It is 5:07, 5/6/2025. I'll stop gnawing off your ear with this. Yes, it gets better. It gets better. But it's not until that guy stops bleeding, and that could be several days. So injustice is here. It's alive and well, and everybody sees it churning and spinning. There it is. Do mushrooms. Legalize mushrooms. They're legal here in Michigan. Come and grab some here at paraconomy.earth. We'll keep you seated and we'll make sure that the frickin' road don't go off the rails for you. Lord knows. That is a possibility. You guys stay classy. I got a bunch of hoes in my back line trying to get whipped.